Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are attempting something that it feels a little bit like navigating a maze in the pitch dark.
There you go.
We're looking at a family tree, but it is hands down the most dysfunctional family tree you can possibly imagine.
That is a surprisingly accurate description of what we're tackling today. It's messy.
It is so wild. I mean, on one branch you have a sibling who is basically a monk meditating in an underwater cave,
Right.
with nothing but a single drum beat echoing. And on the other branch, you have another sibling who's like starting a riot in an abandoned steel mill.
A very angry sibling.
And somehow we have to explain to you, the listener, how these two share the exact same DNA.
When you zoom out, it really is a paradox. We're diving into our source material, which is titled Masters of the Mix, the Techno Stories Episode 3, Subgenres.
And the mission here is pretty specific.
It is. We aren't just looking at techno as this, broad bucket, which is how most people see it.
Right. To anyone not in the know, techno is just a catch-all for loud electronic music.
Or anything that goes boots, cats, boots, cats.
Exactly. But the source makes it so clear that that is a massive oversimplification. We're talking about a single sound from Detroit that just exploded
Shrapnel everywhere.
into this whole spectrum of completely different musical philosophies.
And what's fascinating here, and the text points this out, is that usually genres evolve in a somewhat linear way. A rock and roll becomes hard rock, which becomes heavy metal. You could follow that line.
You can trace the heaviness.
Exactly. But with techno, the evolution is radical. It pulls in opposite directions at the same time. It gets quieter and louder, slower and faster.
And that's the central mystery for me. That's the hook.
Yeah.
How can one genre include a track made of literally nothing but a hi-hat and a kick drum?
Right.
And we will get to that because I still don't quite believe it works until I hear it. And at the same time include music designed for mosh pits.
It creates a spectrum.
Yeah.
A very, very wide spectrum.
So let's unpack this. Our mission is to map this techno spectrum from the barely there sounds of minimal all the way to the violent aggression of trance.
And figure out the philosophy behind each shift.
Why did it split like this?
Let's do it.
Okay, so we have to start at one extreme. The philosophy of less is more. Minimal techno.
This is the logical place to start. The context here is key. In the early 90s, rave culture was just accelerating, getting bigger, louder, more chaotic.
Yeah, you had the rave stabs, breakbeats, vocals, sirens.
All of it. So minimal techno wasn't just a style, it was a counter movement. It was a conscious choice to just hit the brakes and strip everything back.
To the absolute essentials.
The absolute bone.
Now, the source material mentions a few key figures here, but one name really, it just dominates the conversation. Richie Houghton.
Plastic Man.
Also known as Plastic Man.
Yeah.
You can't tell the story without him.
Not at all. A giant in the field.
And the source highlights a track of his called Spastic. And I love this description because it sounds impossible on paper.
It really does.
It says the track is just a hi-hat, a kick, and a snare roll. That's it.
No bass line, no melody, no pads. Just percussion.
And yet, if you play that track on a big sound system today, 30 years later.
It still destroys the room. It's incredible.
But explain the mechanics of that. How does a track with like 2 or 3 elements not just get excruciatingly boring after 30 seconds?
Well, that's the genius of it. When you remove all the flashy stuff, the
Yeah.
melody, the big emotional chords telling you what to feel,
Right.
you force the listener to shift their focus. You stop listening for the song, and you start listening to the sound, the texture, the tiny microscopic shifts in the rhythm.
So you're listening to the timbre of the drum, not the notes being played.
Precisely. It
Yeah.
becomes hypnotic. It's not about what you add. It's about the tension created by what you take away.
Yeah.
That snare roll and spastic just build and build.
And there's nothing else to distract you from it.
So that one snare roll feels like the most intense thing in the entire world.
So it's almost a psychological trick on the listener.
In a way, yeah. It creates this loop that just pulls you in. And the source also points to Robert Hood here.
Yes, with his Minimal Nation project. The text calls that the manifesto for the genre.
Which is a strong word, but it's accurate. Hood really solidified this idea that you don't need the bells and whistles. All you need is the groove and repetition. He was taking the funk and soul of Detroit and just stripping it to its skeleton.
That seems like incredibly confident music making. You have to be so sure of your groove to put that little out there and just say, this is enough.
It's raw confidence. And what's interesting is how that philosophy evolves.
Yeah.
It didn't just stop in Detroit or Berlin. The source takes us to a really unexpected place.
Romania.
Right, the Romanian scene.
Artists like Radu, Petri and Sparescu, Raresh.
Yep.
I admit that was a blind spot for me before reading this.
Oh, the huge movement in the underground. Real minimal. This is where minimal gets even, well, more minimal.
Well, if that's even possible, the text mentions microhouse and clicks and cuts.
Yeah, we're moving away from the big kick drum and into pure texture. We're talking about music built from sounds you'd normally try to edit out.
Like glitches.
Glitches. A tiny click here, a pop there, a background hiss that changes slightly every 16 bars. It's an aesthetic that demands something the source calls deep listening.
Deep listening. I like that.
Yeah.
It implies you have to participate. You can't just have this on in the background while you're doing the dishes.
Well, you might, but you might not notice the track has ended.
Right.
But deep listening means the changes are so subtle, so microscopic, that if you aren't paying attention, you'll miss the evolution. And these tracks can be 15, 20 minutes long.
So on one end of our spectrum, we have this cerebral, stripped back, almost intellectual experience.
Correct. It's techno for your head.
And then the pendulum swings.
It swings hard.
And it doesn't just swing, it breaks off its hinges and smashes through a brick wall.
A very good way to put it.
This is where the timeline gets so interesting because, humans are reactionary. If things get too quiet, someone, somewhere, is going to want to scream.
The opposite extreme. Enter hard techno.
And the source material's description is perfect. It says the direction went louder, faster, harder.
No nuance there.
No, subtlety is gone. The hypnotic grooves are replaced by distorted kick drums, aggressive bass lines.
And we're pushing the tempo way up, past 140 beats per minute.
The names mentioned are heavy hitters. Chris Liebing, Adam Byers, Surgeon, and the adjectives are things like relentless energy.
It's a physical assault compared to the mental game of minimal. But it's still functional. It's still body music designed to make a crowd move.
But then it gets even more extreme. The text zooms in on a subvariant called Schranz. It's German.
Schranz. It sounds like what it is.
It really does. And if hard techno is intense, Schranz is. Well, the source calls it pounding, industrial, almost violent.
Violent.
That is a strong word for dance music. Usually you think of unity, happiness.
It is. But it captures the intent. This isn't music for sipping a cocktail. It's made of very short, distorted loops run at incredible speeds. The source explicitly connects this to the energy of punk rock.
Techno for mosh pits. That's the quote that stood out.
Exactly. Punk wasn't meant to be pretty. It was about raw, powerful expression, releasing aggression. Schranz tapped into that same primal need.
It's about catharsis through noise.
Absolutely. Sometimes you need to meditate, and sometimes you've had a terrible week, and you just need to get in a dark room and sweat it out until you can't feel your legs anymore.
Which fichik. Speaking of dark rooms, that leads us perfectly into the next category.
Okay.
We're leaving the high-speed violence and moving into something a bit grimier, industrial techno.
Now, this is where things get really gritty.
The fusion of techno with industrial music.
Right. So if hard techno is about speed and aggression, industrial techno is more about texture and atmosphere. The source describes a sonic palette of harsh noise, metal percussion, grinding sound.
And metallic textures.
Yeah.
It sounds like a factory.
A factory in a dystopian future where the robots have taken over.
And they're not happy about it.
No, they are not.
The vibe here is dark atmospheres. And the artists listed Surgeon again, who seems to bridge these gaps. Regis, Ancient Methods, Blonde.
These artists are masters of sound design. They are taking sounds that shouldn't be musical, grinding metal, static, hiss, and forcing them into a rhythmic structure.
The labels mentioned are Downwards and Ostgutton. And Ostgutton is, of course, the label for Bergen in Berlin.
Legendary institutions. They really define this sound. The Birmingham sound from the UK, which Downwards represents, is just crucial here. It feels like concrete.
There's a quote here that I think sums it all up. The source describes this as techno for the apocalypse.
That is a very evocative image.
It is. Techno for the apocalypse. What does that imply to you?
It implies a confrontation with reality. It's brutal. It's uncompromising. It's not trying to escape reality like, say, trance music does. It's reflecting a harsh, decaying world.
It's the soundtrack to the world falling apart, but you're dancing on the ashes.
That's a great way to put it. There's a serious aesthetic beauty in that decay. It finds the sublime in all that noise.
Okay, so we've had hypnotic, we had violent, we've had apocalyptic. My ears are ringing just talking about it. I think we need a breather.
We definitely do. Let's cleanse the palate.
Let's pivot to the total contrast. a genre the source calls the underwater meditation.
Dub techno.
This is a beautiful genre.
It's probably my personal favorite on this list.
So the source calls this the atmospheric ambient side of the spectrum. But it's still techno, right? It still has a kick.
Oh yeah, it takes that 44 techno temperate, but it slows it way down, spaces it out, and just submerges it.
The characteristics listed are deep bass lines, heavy use of reverb and delay, and a massive sense of space.
Space is the key instrument. In trance, there's no space. It's a wall of noise. In dub techno, the silence between the sounds is just as important as the sounds themselves.
The text uses that great analogy. It sounds underwater.
It really does. Think about physics. When you're underwater, high-pitched sounds get muffled. Low sounds travel further. Dub techno mimics that with heavy reverb and delay. The high frequencies get rolled off.
It sounds muffled, but in a warm, enveloping way.
Exactly, like being in a warm ocean.
So who do we thank for this? The text points to Berlin again.
The originators.
Is it?
Basic Channel, Moritz von Oswald, and Mark Ernestus. You just cannot overstate their importance to electronic music history.
They created the whole template.
They essentially invented the genre in the 90s. They took the influence of Jamaican dub reggae, which is all about echo and effects and mixing, and applied it to cold Detroit techno machinery.
Wow, Jamaican dub meets German engineering.
And it created something absolutely timeless.
Yeah.
The Basic Channel sound is iconic. You know, that one minor chord stab that hits once,
And then just echoes out for bars and bars.
and it changes textures, it fades, getting grittier and softer.
The source also mentions modern masters like Deep Chord and Rod Model.
Carrying the torch. Some of their stuff is basically field recordings of a city in the rain with a kick drum underneath. It's meditative.
If industrial is the apocalypse, dub techno is the safe haven you retreat to.
It demands patience, but in a very soothing way.
So we've gone from the mosh pit to the isolation tank, but we have one more stop on this tour.
Okay.
And this one brings a very specific piece of hardware back into the spotlight.
The return of the squeal.
Acid techno. Now, the source makes a point of distinguishing this from acid house.
Right. Same equipment, very different attitude.
Acid house, was generally playful. Summer of Love, smiley faces, late 80s optimism.
It was bouncy. Acid techno took that same sound that squelched from the Roland TV303 synthesizer and dragged it into much harder, darker territory.
The text describes it as aggressive, fast, hard, and psychedelic.
It's the psychedelic edge that defines it. It wasn't just about being hard. It was meant to be trippy, to disorient you.
And the context is important, too. The source says this was the soundtrack for outdoor raves.
Exactly. Free parties, illegal raves, squatted warehouses. You have to imagine this setting. It's 4 a.m., you're in a muddy field, the generator is humming away.
Can you just hear that squelch?
That 303 sound. The way the filters open and close, making the sound go from a low purr to a high scream, it drives a crowd into a frenzy.
It's intense. The key figures mentioned are Hard Floor, the Stay Up Forever label.
And Chris Liberator, he's a great example of that punk ethos meeting acid. It's fast, frantic, and just totally unapologetic. It's the sound of rebellion.
So let's just look at this map we've drawn. It is a massive map.
It really covers the whole range of human emotion, doesn't it?
We started with minimal restraint, just a hi-hat and a kick. We went to trance violence, distortion, mosh pits.
We visited the apocalypse with industrial techno.
We went underwater with dub techno.
And we finished in a muddy field with acid techno psychedelic aggression.
It's just a testament to how versatile the core idea of techno really is. You start with a machine and a sequencer, and you can end up in all these different worlds.
It's incredible.
Now, the source material wraps this up with a little teaser. The next phase of the history is apparently underground versus commercial.
Ah, when techno hits the mainstream.
That's always a contentious moment in any genre's history.
The business techno era, as some call it.
We'll save that drama for another day. But the final takeaway from this text is a simple quote. The vibe is the only rule.
And I think that's the only way you can reconcile all of this. They don't share the same tempo or instruments or mood, but they all share a vibe, a commitment to that machine groove.
It does make you think, though, and this is what I want to leave our listener with.
What's that?
We've just described a genre that can be a meditative ambient track that puts you to sleep, and it can also be a violent industrial noise track that scares you.
Yeah.
If techno can be both of those things, does the definition of the genre even come from the beat anymore? Or does it come from a shared attitude towards technology itself?
That is the million-dollar question. Is it the sound, or is it the philosophy behind the sound?
Something to think about next time you're listening to a track that's just a hi-hat and a kick drum. Thanks for diving in with us.
See you next time.